Roronoa Zoro is one of One Piece's greatest characters. He's one of manga's greatest characters. But why? Well, maybe because he has the most unique and badass sword fighting style in all of anime. Or because of that time where he earned Mihawk's respect with his immense willpower and sense of honor. Or the fact that he was prepared to sacrifice that honor, his dream, and even his life for Luffy. But the love for Zoro goes a lot deeper than just his badass feats. I mean, you gotta love his personality. All jokes aside, I've talked about why Zoro is such an amazing character a lot on this channel, but really you can boil it down to just these three things that make him one of manga's greatest characters. As you know, Zoro started out as a strong-willed kid already determined to become the strongest swordsman in the world even before ever meeting Kuina and their promise to each other. We also know that Zoro is somehow related to the 𝙻𝚎𝚐𝚐𝚗𝚍 clan from Wano, but ironically grew up in a place called the 𝙻𝚎𝚐𝚐𝚗𝚍 village, a colony of former Wano citizens in the East Blue. There he trained at the village's dojo, where he was able to beat anyone with the exception of the dojo master's daughter Kuina. After they promised to each other that one of them would become the strongest swordsman in the world, Kuina tragically died under mysterious circumstances. Now her father tells Zoro that she tragically fell down the stairs, but it is strongly hinted at that she might actually have taken her own life because Kuina felt that women were physically inferior to men and thus could never make up for that difference. No matter what happened, this event cemented Zoro's dream even more and he spent his entire youth training hard. Later on, he then became a bounty hunter to pay his bills while he was off searching for Dracula Mihawk. One day, in a village called Shell Town, he then saved a little girl from the marine captain's son Helmeppo, who was chasing her with his wolf. Later, in exchange for not harassing the little girl and for not being labeled a criminal by the Marines, Zoro then agreed to be tied to a pole in front of the Marine headquarters there and not eat for a whole month. A deal that the Marines never intended to uphold in the first place. So, despite being a bit of a lone wolf type of person, Zoro decided to accept Luffy's offer to join his crew. And everything after that really is history, with countless epic fights and moments for the future strongest swordsman in the world. But the reason people love Zoro so much goes a lot deeper than just badass feats. It's really the character's personality that makes him resonate with so many fans and makes him one of the most popular characters in all of One Piece, sometimes even outranking Luffy himself in that regard. And so, as the first of our three main points, what are the attributes and values that best define the Straw Hat's moss-hatted swordsman? Well, first and foremost, it's strength. There is no shortage of fans who speculate that Zoro might be even stronger than Luffy, though it helps that blades are one of Luffy's weaknesses. And Zoro's goal to become the world's greatest swordsman is a feat that generally will take immeasurable strength. Secondly, there is Zoro's discipline, because there is no easy path or shortcut to the type of strength that Zoro seeks. And so while most of the time the rest of the crew is just chilling on board of the ship, Zoro is constantly working out, lifting the biggest weights known to men, because he knows that he can only achieve his dream through diligent training. Third is honor. Despite his ferocious power, he is morally pretty upright. For instance, famously, he refused to let Mihawk strike his back and instead offers his life and takes his defeat standing upright instead of turning tail and running away. But the most defining value that you might not have expected that really defines Zoro's character is altruism. Even though his entire life is hyper-focused on his goal, he is willing to lay down his life for others. And you can even say that his own dream to become the world's strongest swordsman is not his alone. He also fights for this dream in honor of Kuina's memory. And so our very first introduction to Zoro exemplifies all of these core values. When Kobe first told Luffy about the rumors, we were introduced to a terrifying monster, a bloodthirsty, superhuman pirate hunter. But then when we saw him in the stocks, he showed great discipline and honor. He went without food and water for days on end, and he did it for the sake of an innocent family. He did the honorable thing in allowing himself to be imprisoned in exchange exchange for the family's lives, and when he asks Luffy to feed him the rice balls that 𝚬𝚎𝚅 smashed on the ground, it shows another honorable layer to his personality. So really, the fact that he was so strongly defined as a character right from the beginning shows just how steadfast Zoro truly is in his convictions. To really understand what makes Zoro such a great character though, we have to go even deeper and beyond his values that he holds and into the themes that he represents as a character. So really, what motives does Zoro portray and what real-life connections does Oda-sensei use in developing his character? And the first one among these is actually the religious theme amongst swordsmen in One Piece, because many significant swordsmen in One Piece are all connected with one religion or another. For instance, Shanks is connected with Nordic mythology. He's the captain of a Viking ship and his one arm suggests parallels to the one-armed Norse deity Tyr. Dracula Mihawk, the current strongest swordsman in the world, is connected with symbolism from Christianity, or at least Gothic vampire literature, which itself is linked directly with Christianity. He is strongly modeled after a Spanish conquistador, and his black blade Yoru makes his silhouette appear as a giant Christian cross behind him. Zoro, however, appears to have connections to Buddhism. Now this is mostly evident in his attacking names, such as his moves Crossing of the Six Paths and Ashura, a type of demigod within Buddhism and Hinduism. And both of these religions in turn were also influenced by a religion called Zoroastrianism, from which Zoro might even derive his name from. Next, we have the theme that swords themselves represent in One Piece, because the swordsmen in One Piece seem to follow a code of honor. And as a result, the swords themselves can also be seen as a sign of respect. For example, when Zoro first encounters Mihawk, he jumps at the chance to fulfill his goal. If he defeats the warlord right here, right now, then he'll become automatically the world's greatest swordsman. And so Mihawk, surely no stranger to such challenges, thinks that Zoro is just another kid who thinks that he has what it takes to survive in the Grand Line. And at this point, he doesn't respect Zoro and therefore doesn't even use his normal sword against him. He uses a tiny pocket knife. However, once Zoro demonstrates just how honorable he truly is by declaring that the scars on the back are a swordsman's biggest shame, Mihawk recognizes Zoro as a worthy rival with genuine potential. And so, out of respect, he uses Yoru to deal the finishing blow of the duel. For example, during Zoro's fight with King, we do see what a dishonorable swordsman looks like. King doesn't follow a similar moral code to Zoro or Mihawk. Instead, he uses tricks such as hooked swords to try and disarm his opponent rather than fight a genuine duel. Also, any honorable swordsman would of course hit the subscribe button at this point in the video. Next, we have the Bushido. Now, it should really come as no big surprise that Zoro is influenced by samurai. We've learned that he has heritage in Wano, and 𝚬𝚎𝚐𝚐 village in the East Blue, where Zoro was raised, was founded by samurai from Wano who fled after Kaido's takeover. Not only that, but Princess Vivi literally calls Zoro Mr. Bushido. Now, in case you don't know, Bushido is another name for the samurai code or the way of the warrior. And throughout the various periods of Japanese history, the Bushido has kind of evolved with the times. However, one good way to summarize it comes from Nitobe Inazo of the Meiji period. He describes 8 central virtues to the path of the swordsman. Those were righteousness, courage, compassion, respect, honesty, honor, loyalty, and self-control. And obviously these are all virtues that Zoro embodies in an almost idealistic way. And really, going by the Bushido, I would say that he's even more a samurai than the samurai of Wano. But now I think it's really time to look at Zoro's overall character arc in the story and how he fits into the story of One Piece overall. How does Zoro change throughout the story, and what does that teach us about his character that makes him so incredibly lovable? When you break it down, Zoro really serves 2 main roles in the Straw Hat crew. Well, technically not named as the first mate, he clearly fits that part perfectly. He is and always has been Luffy's right-hand man and has been there since the beginning of Luffy's adventure to back up his captain. As the first mate, he's not just a subordinate to Luffy though. Instead, he also acts as Luffy's counterbalance. Zoro always steps in as a leader when Luffy is incapacitated and even holds the crew together in its time of greatest turmoil. In fact, he's made such a name for himself as a noteworthy pirate that, just like Killer, he's considered part of the Supernovas despite not being a captain himself. However, officially, Zoro's role in the crew is that of the swordsman. Next to Luffy, he is the deadliest and most powerful member in the entire crew. Whenever there's any battle to be fought, Zoro is the first to volunteer to cut down the opponent and protect everyone on Luffy's ship. And really, it's no coincidence either that Zoro uses blades, because while Luffy can resist blunt attacks and even gunfire, his biggest weakness are cutting attacks. However, Zoro can go sword to sword with anyone who could seriously threaten to cut down his captain. Now, Zoro's character arc is the story of an individual overcoming a single central character flaw. And no, I'm not talking about him constantly getting lost, that's his other fatal flaw. As we mentioned earlier, Zoro is a lone wolf type of character. In his quest to become the world's greatest swordsman, he really tossed aside all friendships and camaraderie in exchange for an all-encompassing focus on his goal. And as a result, Zoro wants to take on everything by himself. Think about it. When Zoro gets lost from the crew, this actually serves a crucial writing purpose for Oda. It's not just a gag, because often when the crew gets divided into different groups, Zoro ends up on his own. In Sabaody, in Dressrosa, and Wano, just to name a few countries, Zoro ends up in isolation from the rest of the crew going on a solo adventure. Especially in Wano, this perfectly captures the trope of the wandering Ronin samurai. And while this kind of gives Zoro this super cool vibe of I can do anything on my own, it also gets him into real trouble when he could do things together with other crewmates. So it's really nice to see that over time, Zoro's greatest character development throughout the entire series has been overcoming this lone wolf persona, if not completely, of course. He has grown so close to his crewmates to the point where he's even willing to sacrifice his own dream and life for their sake. And I actually want to walk through the entire story through each arc and show you just how incredibly nice and subtle this character's arc truly is. When Luffy first meets Zoro, his life is literally on the line. His unwavering sense of honor has put him in a dangerous situation at the hands of someone as dishonorable as 𝙻𝚎𝚐𝚐𝚗𝚍. He has agreed to go for weeks without food or water, strung up on a cross, not knowing that the spoiled son of 𝙻𝚎𝚐𝚗𝚍 has no intention whatsoever of keeping his side of the bargain. And so at first he laughs off Luffy's request to join his crew and become a pirate, because he is a pirate hunter after all. But after Luffy saves him from execution, he gains a newfound respect for his new captain. And so at this point, agreeing to join Luffy on his adventure seems like just as good a path as any. After all, the two both have impossibly ambitious dreams to become the Pirate King and the world's strongest swordsman, and if ever anything happens to Luffy, he can just keep going his own way. Now, this call to grand adventure parallels when Rayleigh joined Roger. He's swayed by the captain's charisma and free spirit, which complements his own stoic and individual nature. And really, even though Zoro walked his path alone, if he hadn't joined up with his captain, he wouldn't have survived. The next monumental step in Zoro's character growth is on the Baratie, when he goes face to face with Mihawk. Arguably one of the best moments in the entire series. He's utterly defeated, but the warlord still sees something important in Zoro. Even though he still clearly lacks the power, he has the strength of will to grow and become stronger. And so the exchange between these two swordsmen actually foreshadows many of Zoro's later feats and his growth as a character. For example, Mihawk defeats him with a tiny knife, much like the knife that Zoro uses at the beginning of Wano to escape his captors. Zoro witnesses Mihawk slicing a whole ship in half, a feat that Zoro is more than capable of after the time skip. And Mihawk even refers to Zoro as a frog in a well, which is kind of similar to the English saying of a small fish in a big pond. And then later on Fishman Island, Zoro would actually use the exact same sentence to Hyozu, the overly confident greatest swordsman of Fishman Islands. Later in Arlong Park and Loketown, Zoro comes to respect Luffy much more. When he confronts Arlong, he sees just how far Luffy himself is willing to go for someone he considers his nakama, and in Loketown, he sees Luffy's fearlessness in the face of death and how he's willing to die if it meant that he's working towards achieving his dream. Again, remember, these are things that Zoro values immensely as well. On Water 7, we really see Zoro step into the role of the first mate for the very first time. When Luffy and Usopp fight over the fate of the Going Merry, the rest of the crew are devastated. Zoro, however, is the glue that keeps them all together. His cool-headed, stoic demeanor are crucial in a situation like this. When everyone's emotions are really riled up, he occupies the difficult position and does what must be done to maintain the sanctity of the Straw Hats and Luffy's honor as a captain. He really understands just how difficult this conflict is for Luffy, but at the same time, even as Nami urges for compassion, Zoro understands that the crew must remain loyal to Luffy. And Zoro also refuses to allow Usopp to rejoin while deflecting with humor and antics. He'll only allow Luffy to let him board the ship once again if he issues a genuine apology for his misdeeds. And really, without Zoro's strength and conviction, the crew may have fractured permanently here on Water 7. In the next arc, Thriller Bark, we get the single most important Zoro moment in the entire series so far. Nothing happens. When the entirety of the crew is incapacitated, Kuma strikes a bargain with Zoro. The warlord will spare Luffy's life and the rest of the crew if Zoro agrees to take on all the pain that Luffy suffered during the battle, on top of Zoro's own already severe strain from fighting Ryuma and Ors. This is the ultimate instance of Zoro shouldering Luffy's burdens and acting as a first mate, and moreover, despite being terribly wounded, he stands with pride as he declares that nothing happened. Zoro doesn't do the things that he does for credit. He has complete satisfaction in knowing that he's done his duty and the right thing. Though it's important to say that in this scene too, it shows Zoro's character flaw of trying to take on everything by himself. And really, it's the same with becoming the world's greatest swordsman. He's not doing it to gain clout or recognition in the world. He simply wants to prove his strength to himself and no one else. At least as far as we know. Now, one thing that I think people overlook is that during the 2-year time skip, Zoro demonstrated just how loyal he really is to Luffy, arguably even more than on Thriller Bark. In order to become stronger and help fight for Luffy's dream, he's sacrificing his own pride and begs 𝙻𝚎𝚐𝚐𝚗𝚍𝚑, the person he wants to take down, to take him in as a student. Zoro began as a character with one single goal. He wanted to prove his own strength, but eventually he found that through dedication and loyalty, he could find an even greater purpose. By fighting not only for his own goal, but for that of Luffy and all the other Straw Hats together as well, he has unlocked his true strength and potential. Strength enough to become the world's greatest swordsman for someone else. So this unbridled power isn't what makes Zoro such a beloved character. It's not just his badass fights, there are plenty of characters who offer that kind of action. And so the real reason that people love Zoro so much are his honor, his compassion, and his altruism. When Luffy found him, Zoro hadn't been crucified as a test of his own will. He was doing it to save an innocent little girl. And even though Zoro walked a lonely road in pursuit of his goal, he never truly walked alone. His dream was not just his, it was inherited. So really, Zoro has never really fought only to prove his strength to himself, but he fought to prove his strength to Kuina and Luffy and everyone who's dear to him. So similar to Luffy, more than a character, Zoro is meant to portray an ideal that through discipline, loyalty, honor, we just don't lift ourselves up, but lift up everyone around us. And so the beauty of Zoro's character is that he shows us that real strength and purpose comes from unwavering dedication to others. And even then, there is still so much more detail and nuance within Zoro's character, especially for his character arc with Luffy. I have a whole video breaking it down in even more detail right here.